every time I feel great joy coming here. And actually, last night I gave a talk in another place, Theravada Center, and I especially mentioned the Nalanda Center because it's maybe my karmic connection, I think, because I didn't plan to come for this. And then suddenly I was told that this is the occasion, whether I would accept the invitation. So I gladly accepted it. Yeah. Uh, so without being sure about the expectation from me at that time, the only understanding I had was this is a memorial uh, service event. So I thought I was not going to do my usual style of very long winding and complex Dhamma lectures. Yeah. So I didn't prepare anything at that time first. And last night after a long lecture, I went back. It will be around midnight, and I thought I should do something. And I started jotting down a few things. Yeah. Few points. So this one thing to say, first thing I want to say is that this is not going to be a in a way, not very formal Dhamma talk. Let's do a Dhamma so-called lecture. But I do want to share some important thought also with you, because whenever I speak on the Dhamma, I don't simply say something and just go away. I want to share something from my heart. So I want to then start with some fond memories of my reminiscence of my with the Venerable Keshri Dhammananda as a young monk at the time. Yeah. And also somehow I feel, to begin with, if I go into that part, somehow I feel that I'm maybe karmically, yeah, connected with Nalanda somehow in some way, because as a young monk, this is in the late 90s, 1976 or something, I actually studied at Nalanda. Maybe I hope to study here also again later. So that was Nalanda in India, and that is the Nalanda. It's called the Nalanda Mahavihara, yeah, which is the new institute or college built, constructed more or less by the side of the ancient relics, yeah. Now today it becomes a bit confusing because there are two Nalanda universities now. The one I went was the original modern institution based on the ancient one, yeah, but still a modern one, yeah. Then there's another more modern one, more recent one that is now uh, in Rajagrihi, which is a short distance from Nalanda, and they have built up a very huge university, very good uh, campus, and with international uh, support, sponsorship, and I hope it will prosper well. Originally, my understanding was that they wanted the first modern Ananda to be merged with this one, but the older Nalanda, the older modern Nalanda, yeah, refused and said, no, we have historical reasons to stay where we are, and, So, but I think it's good. There are both there, and very recently I went back again. I went back after leaving Nalanda. I went back only after a long, long time, many, many years. Now, you remember I was there in the late, is it something like 1990, 76, around that time. Between 76 and 77, I did some study there. It was a long time ago, something like 50 years ago, right? Half a century ago. Yeah. After that, it took me a long time before I had another chance to visit. So altogether, maybe I've made 3 visits to the older modern Nalanda. And this time I went there and I was invited for a lecture. I gave a lecture there, and very, very happy occasion. So all the fond memories all came back to me. The Chinese temple at the corner of the street in that village where I stay as a young monk while studying in Nalanda. It's still there, but very much transformed now. And I went back, and I'm a person who uh, who have who emphasize very much about feelings, not just intellectual thought, feelings as a human being. Yeah. So to cut it short, I had tremendous feeling of gratitude and affection at that time. All this gratitude to the teachers, especially like to someone, to one Sanskrit teacher on my way. That's where I learned Sanskrit properly at first. He gave his time to me in the afternoon. Every afternoon I went there, to his residence, teacher residence, and I learned from him personally, besides the classes and so on. So that was my connection with Nalanda. And also, from the Chinese Buddhist traditions, I think many of you are from Chinese Buddhist traditions. You know Xuanzang, yeah, who risked his life going to India and to study the languages in India, and he mastered Sanskrit. He was a master Pali also, and other Prakrit, greater Prakrits, and went back with many texts and translated many texts. So that was a place to spend something like more than 12 years. So all this feeling came to me, you see, and I very much wish that in modern time, there is or there are a few more, at least one more, maybe this one, institution, also named Nalanda, developing, you see, into the real Nalanda or the modern version of the ancient Nalanda. So this is one thing, somehow I got connected with Nanda. I didn't know when I was invited here for the first time. It's only a few years ago. I didn't know about the existence of a Nalanda Center. Then I was so happy to see all these young people, very sincere and dedicated. And so that's what we want, sincerity, dedications, yeah? Finding purpose in your existence as Buddhist. And now you're inspired by the ideal of Nalanda. Now that leads me to Venerable Dhammananda Mahathera. I understand that it was under his inspiration that this Buddhist center, Nalanda Buddhist Center here, was founded. Maybe something like 20 years ago, or maybe more, 20 years ago. Yeah, and I talked to your leaders and others on the first occasion, and they told how they were inspired by Venerable Mahathera, Kesri Dhammananda Mahathera, whom you affectionately address as the chief high priest, the chief priest. And I was told that it's because of the suggestion of Venerable Nalanda, as Dhammananda, that this Nalanda was formed. It's wonderful. So he had in mind the hope, the expectation that there will be a group of Buddhists in Malaysia, at least, coming up eventually, developing into a real center of Buddhist education, right? Following the blueprint of the ancient Nalanda. That was a very noble aspiration. And because of the Venerable's inspiration of sincere aspiration, today we see here this place actually going in that direction. I understand that you have built up your premises and you have all the hardware now ready. You have a huge group of devoted young people, more than anywhere else, I think, in Malaysia or Singapore. You have a lot of conditions ready now. It will still take some time. It's not an easy thing to do. If I take the example of the modern version of Nalanda where I studied, Actually, by the time I went there, I was a little bit disappointed, and that's why I eventually went to Sri Lanka. I was there and I was determined to stay and study there. But when I went there, it was not the same Nalanda in my dream that I had earlier. When it was started by one very devoted monk called Venerable Bhikshu Kashyap, Bhikkhu Kassapa. He had a great vision of Buddhist education, and he wanted it to be a continuation of the ancient Nalanda tradition. And he also was very broad-minded. He was, of course, 100% a Theravada monk, but his perspective was very, very broad, and he wanted different traditions, at least the Sanskrit tradition also of Buddhism represented. So at that time, he attracted some great minds like Professor Mukherjee, Professor Chetterjee, Professor Tatia. These were giants. Today, it's hard to find in India now. No, you can't find anymore. But they were great scholars, and they were the directors after Kashyap. By the time I went there, so I heard so much about it, I was just dying to go. I went as a young man from where, not from Malaysia. I was already out of Malaysia, came back and then again out of Malaysia. I went to India, Nalanda from Los Angeles, America. So as a young monk, I was very idealistic. I was seeking. I want to get good gurus, good teachers, who can teach me, who really can exemplify the Buddha's teaching and who can inspire me. And I look around. I must say, at that time, I was a bit disappointed. Maybe I was wrong, but from my limited shadow experiences, after a young monk coming back from my overseas studies, I came back to Malaysia, and I was a bit disappointed, and I wanted to go somewhere to find good teachers. Then by chance, I read about the Vajrabuddhist, and I knew that there were a group of young Buddhists, extremely sincere, local Buddhists, Americans, highly educated. Some have PhDs, some have MA, and few some were lecturer and teacher themselves at University of Berkeley and other places, and they became monks and nuns under a Chinese teacher, and their magazine describes the daily life and the practice. They were so sincere. I was touched. Buddhists can be so sincere, not the type that I saw, at least, or generally saw in Malaysia and Singapore at that time, or even in Taiwan, other places. Here you are, you have a group of Buddhists, they were, I know, for instance, one couple, both became disciples of the master, and both decided to renounce the world. One joins the nun part, the other joins the monk part. And the Venerable Du Lun at that time, Xuan Hua Du Lun, Xuan Hua Shangren, was inspiring in its own way. So they practice even asceticism, which of course I couldn't accept very much because my understanding is the Buddha teaches a middle way, and he didn't encourage asceticism. But I very much did appreciate the sincerity of this group of young, highly intelligent, highly educated, modern Americans, taken up by the Dhamma, and they want to practice. So it's from there that I went to India. At that time, I was told there were some, for instance, that actually all the places, in Los Angeles, from San Francisco, I went to Los Angeles, and there was another monk called Dr. Thich Thien Nhat in the Vietnamese temple. That's where I stay, where there was a international center of meditation and a college of oriental study. All this attracted me. Meditation, practice, combined with studies. And by that time, I've changed my mind, because originally, I think for those some people who have read some kind of biographical accounts of me through interviews and, write up, I explained that as a young monk, after my UCC studies, I became a monk. I thought I give everything about Buddhist studies or any scholarship, and all this scholarly study will be a hindrance to me, to my practice. I was so idealistic, actually quite naive. Huh? And that's one reason why I went to that temple. That's called the Gold Mountain Monastery. Once you close the door, it's like totally different world, You get up before 4 o'clock. By 4 o'clock, you have to be ready in the meditation hall. Yeah. And after chanting, it's meditation. The first one is 1 hour. Then you go around. And if you want to have a cup of water or tea, you can do that. But no breakfast. Yeah. Then you come back, you go another round, and then you meditate for another round, and then until about lunchtime, you have your lunch, vegetarian lunch, only once a day. Yeah. And then you go back to the hall and do 1 hour of chanting. Of course, it's a Mahayana setup. I was the only one who's different at that time there. And I was wearing this robe and I refused to change. Anyway, a bit in rebellion also. Like the Badali that I discussed last night. It's like that. I followed their schedule, So it's a wonderful experience. Even though I had some different perspective and understanding. Eventually, I thought, no, anyway, to cut the story short, I don't have time to go through all these details to you, but there is this book, it's published by my students in Hong Kong. And, where I served as a professor in the University of Hong Kong, and then later on, I founded the center, and this student who learned under me in Hong Kong University, they also went over to this small place, and they were the people who put up together. So describe, I don't believe in writing anything autobiographical. I'm not a great man, there's no need and serve no purpose. But they put up something, and now I found that it's inspiring, at least to some people. The way I describe all the experiences, yeah. Just to tell you the story leading up to Nalanda and both Wenba Xuanhua and then the Vietnamese monk I told you who got a PhD from Japan and who started with Dr. Pruden. You know who Pruden is? He's the translator of the Abhidhammakosa Bhashya into English in modern time. I personally read through all his translation at that time. He held a class. He gave seminars there, and I joined the seminars. While he was in the process of translating, he was presenting chapter by chapter of the Abhidhammakosa Bhashya. You have not heard about that. It's a wonderful book, and I very much recommend it. Although it represents a tradition called the Sarvastivada, which is not Theravada, but by and large, the whole framework it was very much like a sister branch of Theravada anyway. Yeah, it's a very inspiring book. And I must say, you don't even have an inspiring book in this way in the Pali commentary literature. This is a very excellent book, but there's very little known in Malaysia, Singapore, among Chinese Buddhists. So I just mentioned in passing. He was giving seminars, in the evenings, and then I joined and I learned like this. Yeah. So there, Dr. Tianan, Dick Tianan, the chief. And then there was another nun, Chinese nun from another Chinese temple in near Los Angeles town. I can't remember exactly where it is. That nun actually came from Hong Kong. All this connection, strange comic connection. I never knew that I would be going to Hong Kong anyway at that time. All of them, to cut the story short, advised me, you don't go away. We see much promise in you. You stay. We support. You want to do PhD, you want to do further study? We pay for you. In fact, the nun said, you learn to drive now. Get ready. we'll get you a vehicle and you can study here. I didn't want anything. No, no, no. I want to go to India. I want to go to the place where the Buddha stepped on the soil with the disciples. And I was so attracted by Nalanda from what I learned and heard. But as I say, again, to cut the story short, when I arrived there, it was a huge disappointment to me. But by that time, when Kashyap passed away, some of the brilliant and devoted Buddhist scholars, actually they were Jainists, but they were devoted Buddhist studies, yeah. And they also passed away, yeah. I met a few, inspiring people like our Venerable U Dhammaratana. He was still there, but he retired. But he was very encouraging to me. Yeah. So the government or not, the state government was not so interested to look after, the Buddhist project. They were not Buddhist themselves, and a lot of complication like this. So they just get some, local people who somehow pass MA or MPhil in Buddhist study and make them lecturers. So it's a far cry from the earlier periods. So I was so disappointed. And eventually I left. After talking to our Mahanaika in Colombo, who at that time became my Upasambhada Upachaya. And he said, if you are disappointed, you come to Sri Lanka. You'll be happy here, So I took him what I went there and all this is a karma, Then I went through my MA and then I became a senior lecturer. And actually I became a professor there before I went to Hong Kong. Yeah. So people helped me so much and looked after me so much. And now I have tremendous feeling of gratitude to Sri Lanka. So that also had connection with Dhammananda who came from Sri Lanka. All these are karmic connections. Yeah. And when I think of in my meditation, at the end of the meditation, I spend some time transferring merits. And I think of all these people. Yeah, the Sri Lanka traditions also. So all these are happy connection. And Nalanda, and after all these years, I went back and then I was thinking there is a Nalanda now sprouting in Malaysia. And I hope one day they will develop into a true center of excellence for Buddhist studies under the inspiration of the ancient Nana spirit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I feel as the ancient spirit of Nalanda. So there is a connection with Nanda. Recently, I think I was told that your center had put up some photos taken by my student, Dr. Nagasena. When I went back to Nanda Mahavira and gave a lecture there. But I think you must have been confused because there were two Nalandas. You don't know which one that is being shown there. I went to both. We can see pictures of both, the new one and the old one. If you like the new one and the newer one. So all these are happy connections, and now it leads me to. It may not be what I have planned here, but it doesn't matter. I think, as I say, I'm a person who thinks much about feelings. I want to express my feelings. So let me now come to my a very fond, grateful memory, reminiscences with Venerable K. Sri Dhammananda as a young monk. Yeah, before I became a monk, I already met him. Now that was the first time. It's a very interesting meeting, and it was in a Thai temple called Buddha Jayanti Temple. I think it's still there. Uh, how I got associated with that, because as a young Buddhist, I went to Mahayana temple and Theravada temples. Yeah. And this is one of the Theravada temple I went a lot, you know. And there was one very kind Thai monk, old monk, very interested in Vipassana meditation and always encouraging us. He couldn't speak much English, but enough to inspire us. So there, by that time, I finished my junior secondary school in Zhonghua in the Chinese school. Yeah. In Gombak Road. Yeah. I think it's still there. I went back. Yeah. This only very recently. I studied there for a few years. And then I joined VI, Victoria Institution, for my last few years in high school. That was a time. So during one holidays, I decided, in fact, encouraged by the Thai monk, to become a temporary novice. I took up temporary ordination during the holiday. Something like, I can't remember, something like 1 month. Yeah, but I was there. Yeah. And one day, Venerable Dhammananda Mahathera went there. He went there to invite monks for an important dana, a celebration, event, and that was the temporary ordination of a famous lay Buddhist. I think maybe you know him, it's Mr. Leong or somebody, a businessman. Mr. My memory is now also not so good. And then he became, he was a businessman, successful businessman, and a great donor to Buddhist causes. And then he also became a novice at that time under Venerable Mahathera. Yeah. And it was only, I heard, something like 2 weeks or 10 days or something. And Venerable, our Venerable Dhammananda was so kind. And he wanted to make it a very good occasion. And he went around to invite monks. That showed his humility. He was the chief. He was already respected as the chief high monk of Malaysia. But he had communication with other Theravada centers, even Mahayana's places. Yeah, that's one of the great quality of the Mahathera. So that's the first time we met each other. He never knew that there was a young man like that. I was a VI boy who became a temporary novice there. And he went there not to invite me first. Of course, he went there to invite the old Thai monk, but he happened to see me there. You understand? And we had a chat, we had a talk, quite a long one. And he seemed very interested in me, very encouraging. That's what I remember. And suddenly I became very impressed with Theravada teacher for the first time. As I say, as a young monk, I was exposed to all different traditions, at least the Chinese Mahayana and Theravada. But under his inspiration, I felt it that here you have a tradition of Buddhism, yeah, with leaders, teachers like this Venerable. He spoke very good English and he was a good speaker. He was not giving a lecture to me, but the way he was explaining things, and I had questions like Badali, young fellow, and many challenging questions, and he answered and very convincing. And he's very concerned. He prepared to spend time. Just imagine that Mahana talking to a young novice, and spent quite a bit of time talking to me. And I say, when you are free, please come and visit Brickfields. Yeah. So that was a happy time. The first time I met him, I was impressed with the rational aspect, the aspect of confidence and inspiration coming from a Buddhist teacher, which I didn't feel in other teacher at that time. Yeah. So that was a very important source of inspiration, the first meeting with him. And of course, nowadays, in recent year, I'm a bit critical of the movement, one aspect of the movement. I do not mean that this is the aspect emphasized by our venerable, but somehow there's one aspect of movement among the English-speaking circle and the Theravada in some places who want to be what I call super or ultra rationalistic and emphasizing the rational aspect far too much, forgetting the heart and the feelings. But it's not like that in the Pali teachings. Pali teachings are, of course, very rational, a lot of wisdom and so on, a lot of logic, but it goes far beyond all these things. But somehow, in the process of development in the Theravada movement, many teachers or many leaders tended towards the rational side excessively. And maybe one reason is because of the process of modernization, which means essentially process of westernization, the Western values. Oh, I mean the Asian Buddhist too much. Maybe this is the reason. But anyway, the type of rationality I felt in the Venerable was very inspiring at that time. And so that was that. And I went back to VI, I finished my study, and then I went overseas and all this. Then from overseas, whenever I came to Kuala Lumpur, of course, I paid a visit to the Venerable Kesri Ramananda Mahathera, and he was always kind and encouraging. He seemed very happy when when he saw me. That's one thing I really felt. And, he would invite me to give talk as a young monk. I went to Sri Lanka, I taught as a young monk. I became a senior lecturer before my 30 years, 27 or 28 years or something like that. And then eventually I became a professor. So all this time, still quite young, right? Compared to now, I'm 76. So I can say at that time I was young. So every time I went back as a young monk, I visited him. He looked very happy, and he would say, "Oh, tomorrow there's a discussion. You come. You do the discussions." And then I remember he used to have, if I'm not mistaken, himself a session every Friday night or something like that. I think every Friday night. And I spoke on those sessions several times. When I came, he would just let me speak there. Yeah. As a young monk, as a challenging monk myself, I sometimes I raise some challenging points. Just now I also mentioned one already, like that. And but he praised me, although he is also critical and offer his perspective. But he appreciated. I think once he said something like this. He said that our Dhammajoti has spoken something very, very important. If you understand him. Although something, he gave his own points of view. So a wonderful teacher who that reminded me of the Patali Sutta when the Buddha's kind of tolerated and accepted Patali as a challenging young monk, and then encourage him in his own way of thinking and guide him through clear thinking. So every time I went there, that's what he did. I gave Soul Talks in Brickfused. Now, all this year after his passing away, and then when I come back, maybe I didn't have enough time, maybe for other reasons, I hardly go to Brickfused. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the great work they are doing, but it was not the same kind of feeling that I had as a young monk. So it's almost like first thing tomorrow I want to meet Venerable Mahathera, Dhammananda. That kind of feeling I had when there. Yeah. So I had a lot of connection with him. And in fact, I think when a group of Buddhists here compile a volume It's a felicitation volume or memorial volume, I don't know. Yeah. And they also mentioned me, but of course I can't be listed as a disciple of his. I didn't have the great fortune of being a disciple of his. Yeah. By that time I was ordained and by other teachers and so on. But I in my heart, he was certainly an inspiring teacher. Yeah. So they say, like Venerable so and so ordained by you, Venerable Mahathera, and now contributing tremendously to the cause of Buddhism. And then we have others who are inspired by him. My name came under that. So I was happy, even though I couldn't claim that I was a disciple of his. They were my happy experiences as a young monk. Yeah. And then, of course, he used to visit Sri Lanka. Yeah. I think almost every year, at least once. And then I would go and see him. And I found out I'm going to see him. And he is also very kind and encouraging. He would always give me some money. Do you have rope? Do you have this and that? What do you need? So encouraging to me, Always give me some envelopes of money. He knew that I needed it at that time. Yeah. So such a kind man, even though I was not really ordained by him. I was not really officially his disciple. Yeah. So all these are very happy reminiscences with the Venerable Mahathera. And that leads me to emphasize one thing. I don't know I have enough time to go through what I have jotted out last evening. One thing I want to emphasize is that indeed, what we need today and what we lack today is inspiring senior teachers. Venerable Dhammananda certainly exemplified that. Today, we hope, just imagine you have a few more senior teachers like Venerable Dhammananda, the movement will be very, very much different. I think you will produce some. You have great potentials here, yeah. Especially from this group and another group. But certainly we can say that this is what we need. When I think Buddhists, many young, intelligent, sensitive Buddhists, like the ancient Badali Bhikkhu, or maybe challenging Dhammajoti as a young monk, or we feel that somehow the Dhamma movement is not going smoothly. There's a kind of a decline or degeneration. We feel like this. And that applies to ourselves, not to say we are better than others. But from the sutta I shared last night, yeah, and what I'm saying today, we can see that according to Buddha's explanations, there's one thing is because there's not enough inspiration. The Buddha as an inspirer. The word inspiration I want to stress repeatedly. That's what we need. Today we need great teachers like the Venerable Dhammananda and hopefully others also who can inspire the younger students. And inspiration not just from brilliance as a speaker. Venerable Dhamma is certainly one of the best speakers I've ever met. Yeah, certainly. I think you can agree with me. That's only one aspect, but much more than that. You feel a sense of sincerity, They are not perfect. I am not perfect. Nobody is perfect. We don't look for perfection. We look for sincerity. We look for commitment. And you find them all. This what we call it, and cares about the movement, care about younger members of the Buddhist movement. So we need and we lack inspired teachers. To me, the whole Dhamma is characterized by inspiration, or if you like, the Buddha's teaching as what I call a creative educator I don't have time to elaborate on this, right? Is characterized by inspiration, and that these 4 words I mentioned in some of my lectures, I just want to very quickly mention them. Yeah. I use a Pali version. In my Sanskrit book, I gave the Sanskrit correspondence. You see that these 4 terms are found in the Pali canon, but also in the Chinese and then also in Mahayana. Everywhere, the Buddha is said to teach in this way. In one way, one is in Pali term, Sandassati. Second, Samadapeti. I will briefly explain. Third is Samutejeti. And fourth is Sampahansati. These are what I call causative verbs. You know grammar, you know what I mean. And first one is the Buddha points out and shows to you. This is the situation. Like Bhattacharya asks, how is it that he asked one very interesting question, very sharp question? In the past means in the Buddha's time, in the earlier period within the Buddha's, era, there were less Sikkhapada, less training rules, but there were more arahats at that time. Now we have more and more and more rules, but hardly any arahats. What's happening? This young monk is so sensitive. That's why he became rebellious. Yeah, he asked the Buddha answered him. I have spent 2 hours last night. I can't afford to repeat those things. So you can listen to maybe the videotape later. So the first is, then the Buddha points out. And then Buddha points out to Bhattacharya, that's what happened to you when you become rebellious without any awareness of what you're actually doing. This is Samadapeti. Samutejati, Samadapeti means causes to undertake. Yeah. The root is da. Da is to give. When you add a, it becomes to take. Yeah? So the pay signifies a causative significance. So to make someone take up the good, take up the spiritual, you inspire, you encourage. Like, for example, if you know the Buddhist life is good, Dhamma is good, you ask, why not come and learn the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma? That is Samadapeti. That's what the Buddha does. He doesn't just impart knowledge. It doesn't even just point out. Yeah, as a diagnosis, what has happened, what has gone wrong. He goes on to encourage you to rectify the situation. There's Samadapeti. Samutejati means to sharpen you, teach. To sharpen or to fire you up. It has connected with the word also, meaning fire, like tejas. Huh? So he really literally fires you up. Make you brighter, make you more energized. And finally, the fourth one, he makes you happy. He gladdens you. That's what Venerable Dhammananda did us, When he teaching everybody, I'm not a good speaker. I don't make people laugh like Han. I'm an orator. But Venerable had a tremendous sense of humor, but his humor is kind of just to the right extent. It's wonderful. It didn't go to the excess. Nowadays there are some teachers they start by joking from the beginning to the end. I feel it's a bit too much, but Venerable is not like that. He really makes you happy when you listen to him. You feel pleasant. You feel fire up. Just like that. That kind of qualities we want. So these are the 4 words. Remember these 4 words. If you know Chinese, look at the Chinese here. That you find, as I said, not only in Pali text, but in the Chinese Agama text, in the Mahayana text, everywhere. The Buddha went somewhere and he teaches or he shows, right? And he instigates, encourages, yeah? And he inspires and he gladdens everywhere. For example, in some sutta we see that there were some cynic at that time. They were skeptic, and they were all planning to challenge the Buddha. Gautama Buddha is coming to do. We'll go and challenge him and pull him down, and show that he is defeated. So they plan. They're highly intelligent thinkers. They plan their questions, and that's how we asked him. If Gautama answered like this, we will ask that question. Answer like this, we will ask this question. All planned, right? With the aim of defeating the Buddha. But you know what happened? Then they went. They met the Buddha. Before they had a chance to even do this plan to humiliate the Buddha, defeat the Buddha, they just listened to the Buddha, a few words of the Buddha. They became so inspired that they worship him and say, Venerable Sir, from today onwards, please remember me as your disciples until the very end of my life or our lives. Wonderful. Wonderful. If that happens in the Buddhist movement, then we can be assured of the spiritual revival. So that's what we need. It's already in the Dhamma. So we need teachers who can have these qualities. And Venerable Dhammananda is certainly one great teacher in this way. I think I don't want to spend more time and just a little bit more. One thing I want to say, I already have emphasized that I would warn against the Buddhist movement, especially the English Buddhist movement in Malaysia and Singapore, turning into a kind of a super rationalist kind of movement, rationalistic kind of movement. Think of your heart, your feelings, your five khandhas. You have to transform your whole being. You don't want to transform just your mind to be a greater and greater intellectual. Yeah? This is one thing we have to be aware of. And on the other hand, of course, it also means that we cannot be one-sidedly emphasizing the so-called practice. To emphasize practice, of course, is always correct. I have nothing to criticize. And I wish I myself practice more than what I'm doing. I'm trying my best, yeah? But what I want to say is that nowadays also the emphasis on putting aside everything. Just do a vipassana, and so on, and maybe forest meditation. These are all wonderful things, but if they are not done in the proper context, if they're done in a one-sided way, it will be another extreme. And the practitioner would not succeed. And now this is not what I just said. I want to share with you on this point as the last point. First of all, the first aspect implies in terms of education, we have to watch out that a Buddhist institution should not be another factory for pundits. Just turning out mass production of intelligent, highly intelligent, so-called philosophical type of teacher. Even though that aspect is important, but it should be balanced. This is one. Yeah. This is what I mean by super rationalistic, and totally detached from the whole being. The whole being means you're not just the intellect, you're not just a computer. You have your heart, your feeling, your chetana, all the aspects. Extremely important. Buddhism is a part to transform your whole being, not just to make you more and more intelligent and good debater and a philosopher. So this is one thing we have to watch out. I will also emphasize the other aspect about this practice thing, this practice aspect. Practice, as I say, is always good, but let me repeat that point. Yeah, don't quote me out of context. Yeah, and even sila is always good. Yeah, but sila mustn't be just the domain of morality or ethic as conceived by the ordinary worldlings. Sila must serve as the foundation. no doubt the necessary foundation for finally developing your mind, the samadhi, and then liberation. I think you know that well enough. I don't want to spend time on that. Yeah, but today, either, the so-called practice, you observe list and list and list. You have to be perfect. Who can be perfect? I can't be perfect. I'm not perfect in my swimming rules. However much I struggle. Because I don't have any spiritual attainment yet. Yeah? Even if I have, even the Aryas also still have raga, dosa, moha, even though thinner, they said. There is a reality the Buddha has taught. So let's be realistic. But what is important is that in the midst of a struggle, there must be sincerity. There must be commitment. That's what we want. Yeah? So this is one thing we had to watch out for. In brief, you can say that the ideal should be one of the harmonization of the 5 spiritual faculties, the panchendriyas. What are they? You have the aspect of understanding or wisdom. You have the aspect of emotion and faith. You have the aspect of vigor, the active aspect. If you like the external aspect, you have the aspect of the internal also, that is samadhi. Yeah? And then you have the aspect of mindfulness of the total development of the 5 indriyas. So these 5 indriyas, simple as they are in words, represents a whole complete path of development in Buddhism. So Buddhist education should be guided by this principle. And as I said, we wouldn't have enough time to elaborate on this. So what I finally want to share with you is the other aspect I told you. That is overemphasizing just simply practice as if in a mechanistic way. Practice, as I always important, but the practice must be within the context of your spiritual life, which involves what? As I say, your emotion, your feelings, and your relation, and so on. And your purpose, ask yourself, why do I want to do meditation? Why do I want to observe 5 precepts? Is it because I'm a Buddhist from a particular tradition that I'm expected by the tradition or by my group or by my society? I had to behave like this. If that is the case, the way you understand and undertake precept is very unfortunate. You will be at best a good human being, maybe from the sociological point of view, but you certainly you will not make any spiritual progress if you are mechanistically attached. Yeah, and that's why the Buddha warns against this attachment to the extreme. So your practice must be based on firm understanding. If you like, in terms of the Noble Path, you must have samadhi and also sammasankappa to begin to transform your whole total being through the other angas. Like samavacha is a transformation of your aspect of communication with your fellow beings and so on. And then you have how you should orientate yourself, behave yourself, right? Your kamanta and ajiva and all these aspects, and samadhi and samasati, samasamadhi, all these aspects begin with and are grounded on samadhi and sammasankappa. Samadhi represents the perfect vision you have. Yeah, I have seen that is the goal. I have not reached it yet, but I'm fully convinced. And then your sammasankappa commits you. I want to reach that. However imperfect I am, however many times I fall down, I expect to fall down. I will get up again. I will move onwards because I have seen the goal there. So it must be like this. And within this context of proper vision, I don't like to use the word right understanding. Yeah, proper vision and proper volition, proper motivation. You transform your whole being, which includes meditations, which include mindfulness, like samadhi, sati, and so on. This samadhi, sati should not be isolated out of the context. Now, this is unfortunately what people are doing now, right? So much so that today, and at least in the West, you see, there are good movement of mindfulness movement, and so on. You know, I don't know how much they are taught in the heart. What are they doing? They are just using it as Panadols. Yeah. This morning I had 2 Panadol, by the way. I didn't sleep much last night. So, aspirin to stop your headache. It's a total distortion of Dhamma if that is done. Not only that, it can mislead you. You may suffer. Today, again, I don't have time to elaborate, but I have talked about this in different ways. You can find my talks on YouTube and other places. Yeah. So the totalistic context is what I want to emphasize, within which ethical behavior is practiced, sila is practiced, within which meditation is practiced, not outer context. Yeah. So I'm talking about one example. This is only one example. It happened that I was sharing the sutta, the Vadalisa last night, so I just use the material. It doesn't mean that this is the only material I can illustrate this, but we'll see good illustration here. Now, among other things, some of the things I couldn't have time to finish, so I use this opportunity to finish, to do one more aspect from a reading of that sutta. This is translation of Pali. Yeah? The Buddha was explaining after reproaching and pointing out to Vadali what really happened to you that you didn't understand, you were not aware of at that time, you know. Then the Buddha said, of course we forgive you, because if you know your faults and accept your faults sincerely, and you are doing something actively to want to improve yourself, to counteract, we gladly accept you. Forgive you. This is wonderful. This is compassion in the true sense. You want this today. And this is the spirit of Kalanimittata. I lament that today is very, very little left now. The Buddha even talks about in the suttas, yeah, the case of wanting to guard someone who has just a little bit of saddha and pema, a little bit of faith and love. Don't let him lose that little bit. Encourage him, don't crush this tender heart. This is compassionate teaching of the Buddha. So even if you apply Vinaya rules and even you apply so-called punishment, punishment is not the main thing in Buddhism, not the Vinaya. Vinaya is not a system primarily for punishment. Not like policemen catching you, you transgress this law, you have to be in the prison for so many years. And it's not like that. It should not be misunderstood like this. The Vinaya itself, I will explain that word doesn't mean rules. Nowadays, it means you understand it as so many rules, 5 rules, 10 rules, and 207 rules. No. At the beginning, there was not a single rule. They didn't need the rule. By the time the rules came into being, that is the time of the beginning of the decline of the Sangha already. So Buddha said, the solution is not to multiply more and more rules, but to tackle the problem at the very root. I recommend you to read that sutta and listen to that talk that I gave last night. So the Buddha was put out to hear and give me examples, and then he went on in the midst of this to the cases of some monks who wanted to go to the forest and meditate. Isn't it a good thing? Of course, it's a good thing. Right? So you see, let me read it. It's more or less a very little translation. Some bhikkhu, a certain bhikkhu, does not, the first thing is, he does not fulfill the training. There's a kind of a, if you like, a spiritual or religious arrogance. No, I don't need all these things. The only thing is meditation, right? Nowadays, people think like they also among people here. I mean, in Malaysia and Singapore, yeah. And they don't want to come to Buddhist talk anymore. They want to discuss and share the Dhamma. They say, "Oh, we have higher staff now. You know, we have gone higher. We have to retreat to attend and so on." This is very unfortunate. So here is a very interesting case. Buddha points out some bhikkhu does not fulfill the training in the Buddha's teaching, and then he thinks like this: what if I were to go to a hermitage and the forest and so on, and meditate? If I do like that, I would have spiritual attainment. And that's the part. You don't need other things. This is extreme, one-sided understanding, in fact, misunderstanding of meditation practice. So he does that. Then as he's living in the hermitage like this, in the forest doing like this, he's blamed by the teacher who tries to remind him, no, this, you must not just meditating, your meditation must be within the whole context of your sila, samadhi, prajna. You mustn't forget other aspects of the Dhamma teaching. So he's blamed by the teacher, by his fellow practitioners, by all the wise companions, and he himself blamed himself. You have sense of guilty if you are not following the Dhamma, the teaching of the Dhamma, and just only emphasizing meditation, and you want to avoid and go to the forest. It's not necessarily a good thing. So he has inner conflict within him. If you have inner conflict like this, you have to resolve it. It's normal to have conflict. We all have. But we must find a way to overcome, to resolve it. Otherwise, you live in what is the modern term today is depression. We talk so much about depressions. It's a Western thing. Throw that away. Face your own inner self. See your conflict as a human being, which is normal. But commit to coming to a higher level that transcends that predicament. At that level where you are, when you are having this conflict, in a way, sometimes you can't do much about it sometimes. Yeah. But if you come to a high level and look back, the problem is still there, but it doesn't affect you now. You understand? So you have, this is the difference between escaping and transcending. You can't escape reality, but you can transcend the real situation. Come to a high level, that's transcendent. And for that, you must have a totalistic vision of the Dhamma, where you want to go, and so on. Many things are now in my mind I want to say, but I have already gone past 5 minutes, so I had promised that. So I have to finish within another 5 minutes. So, now, this is the case of this person. Buddha said, okay, he's good. He thinks that he doesn't want to socialize. He doesn't want to be entangled in the worldly affairs. But he goes to the forest and meditates. But he is one who has not fulfilled all the teaching of the Dhamma. He thinks that he is clever. He has that religious arrogance. And then eventually he himself also feels a conflict. He blames himself. Yeah. And being thus blamed, he realizes no superhuman state, no distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble one. He wanted to start up to attain all this, he will fail, right? On the other hand, this is the first one. On the other hand, but some people, first, he fulfills the training. That means he attends to the totalistic aspect of the Dhamma. Not just a meditation side, not just going to the forest and avoiding all these entanglements, however necessary it is. So first, the premise, he fulfills the training recommended by the teacher. Then he thinks, yeah, he thinks the same thing. I want to go to the forest and meditate. Now this is correct. And such a person, eventually he's not blamed by anybody. He has a good conscience. He feels happy within him, at peace within him, and he succeeds. Read it. It's very touching. This is the way you must read suttas. Not to just understand the Pali or the philosophy, but the feeling. As you read, your heart is involved with it. So I say yesterday, and I say again and again everywhere, that this is integration of Buddhist study and Buddhist practice. In the very midst of Buddhist studies, you are transforming yourself, and that is practice. The two need not be mutually exclusive. Okay, so I think that's enough. So eventually, this kind of bhikkhu succeeds when his meditation is done in the totalistic context. He doesn't go one-sided, he eventually is liberated. So I recommend you to read this part. Okay, right. Other things I think we don't have time to talk about. So to summarize, Venerable Kesi Dhammananda provides a good exemplification of an inspiring teacher. And I think you should carry that tradition. We should carry that tradition. And I believe that with a firm commitment and sincerity, you will evolve into a movement that produce such influential, inspiring teachers like Venerable Kesi Dhammananda. May all beings be well and happy.